You're listening to the Fooled by the Root podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Heidi Marble. Really happy to be here this afternoon with my beautiful co-host, Amy Hansen, and Patrick Hawes. Hopefully I'm saying your name correctly, Patrick.
Yes, you are.
Okay, fantastic. So Patrick reached out to me and I wanted to introduce him by actually reading his words.
Mm-hmm.
So Patrick, I'm going to go ahead and read this in your words. This was the message you sent to me. I was adopted in North Carolina in August of 1970. My birth date is August 10, and I was officially adopted in September of 1970. From an early age, I knew I was adopted. My adopted mom was Japanese, and I didn't look at all Japanese, so there was no hiding the fact that I wasn't her son. I never really desired to search for my birth family during my childhood. I was raised in a very good home. I was well taken care of. I think the only thing I wondered about was why. Why did my mom give me up? Was I not good enough? Did she not want me? When I asked my adopted mom about any information she had on my birth mom, she told me that my mom was very young and she had me and could not afford to take care of me, and also didn't want me. I would later find out that this was a lie. My adopted mom was very controlling and protective of me and would do just about anything to keep me. I think that's a very powerful beginning to what we're going to talk about today, Patrick. Thank you so much for being willing to be on and share your story.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yes. So Patrick, I think where I'd like to start is kind of where we started. You're in this situation that's really unique. Can you tell us more about your childhood and how this affected you? But maybe just dive into your journey a little bit and build that out for us, if you don't mind.
Sure. I was adopted at 6 weeks old. I did spend, from what I have been able to find out, I did spend about maybe a week or so in a foster home. And then I was adopted by my adopted parents, and like you had mentioned, my adopted mom was Japanese. My adopted dad was American. They were older. So my adopted dad was actually born in 1922, and my adopted mom was born in 1928. So they were 40. My dad was 47, and my adopted mom was 42 when they adopted me. They had met in Japan. My dad served in World War II in the Air Force. And so they met in the late 50s in Japan. And then they got married, and then they moved to North Carolina. That's where my adopted dad was from, was Asheville, and moved there in 1964. And then they adopted me right after my birth date in 1970. And then my adopted dad, he actually passed away when I was 4. He had cancer. And so back then, of course, 1970, cancer there really wasn't much they could do. So he died actually about 3 weeks after my 4th birthday. And that's really the only memory that I really have of him is his funeral, the night of his funeral. I'll never forget that night. Because I was so scared, as a 4-year-old boy, really just not knowing what was going on and knowing that there was something that wasn't good going on. And so then, my adopted mom, so really it was my adopted mom and I for many years. And, she told me probably around about 5, maybe 5 or 6 that I was adopted. And like I said in the letter that you read, there wasn't, I don't look any Jap. I mean, you can see me through the screen, but for those listening, I don't look Japanese at all. But so there was no hiding that I was not her biological son. Now, having said that, I tell people this all the time. Had I looked even remotely Japanese or remotely close to her, she would have passed me off as hers and probably never told me that I was adopted. That's what I kind of meant when I said she was really controlling with that. And then, growing up, while I knew she was there to, for me, and I had a good life and everything, there was this distance between her and I. And a lot of it was, she spoke Japanese and she would talk Japanese to her friends and family and this and that. I didn't speak Japanese. So there was a barrier between her and I that I never really got to know. And like now when I look back and I see pictures of her and I, it's really like, do I really know who this person is? Did I really know who this person was? And, she died in 2004. And, it's hard to believe it's been almost 20 years since she's been gone. But when she passed away, I never really started searching for my biological family until after she died. Because the truth is, had I even mentioned that I was trying to search for my adopted family or my biological family, she'd have never understood. It would have devastated her for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry that you had that loss at such a young age on top of all of the adoption loss. And I'm sure it just intensified your adopted mom's connection to you after your father passed. So talk about pressure. And
yeah.
you're a much nicer man than I am, because I sought out my biological family while my mom was still alive, and it did devastate her. And I think that's the conundrum that a lot of adopted people are in. It's like, if you don't seek, you may not find people that are still alive. It's like, what do you do? It's almost like you can't win. That's how it feels to me in that respect. And so I have all the respect for you for the kindness and the waiting, because not me.
Yeah, I know. And believe me, it crossed my mind many times. And even after she told me as a young, was 5, 6 years old when she told me that I was adopted, and I had all these questions. Okay, well, if you're not my real mom, where is my real mom? And I can remember at 6, 7, 8 years old being in like the grocery store or the mall and looking at women, looking at moms and saying, well, wait a minute, maybe that's my mom. Is that my mom? She looks familiar. She looks similar to me. She has like same eye or something like that. So that was really a struggle, even at that age, to really try and understand that this person, while they're taking care of me and providing for me and this and that, I don't have that connection to them. So that was like you had mentioned earlier with my, being adopted, and then my adopted father passing away at such a young age, that already like just added to the loss. And who's the next person that's going to walk out of my life or leave me behind or something like that. That was something that carried with me for a long time. And even after my adopted mom passed away in 2004, I went through at least a year of counseling and therapy. And my wife and I, God bless my wife, my wife and I, we nearly divorced after my adopted mom passed away, because I was angry and I was hurt, and I didn't understand all of these things that I was going through. And it was tough. It was tough on both her and I for a while.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being honest about that, because I think so often we don't talk about the impact that our own turmoil and trauma has on the people that love and care for us. And
yes,
I think it manifests in so many different ways. And it's very hard to get around it, because we're always in a state of protection. How do we protect our heart, and how do we protect? And the sad part about that is that a lot of times in doing so, we're blocking the very love we need to heal. But it's difficult. It's really hard to be vulnerable. So I appreciate you sharing those intimate details, Patrick. That's just really, really hard. There's so many beautiful parts about your story too, though. And I don't know, Amy, is there anything you want to interject before I charge into the next segment?
Sure. Yeah, I was going to ask you, based on your story, about going to search later after your adopted mother passed, had you had thoughts of searching before? Like, when did I think as adoptees, we all want to see what we look like, right? We would love to have a picture, but when did that like
Yeah.
really strong urge for you come out that you wanted to look for your biological mother?
I think it was always in the back of my mind, like just in
Okay.
the back of my mind, it was always there. It's, but as I said, I said earlier, out of, knowing that my adopted mom would
Okay.
never have supported it, never would have understood, and would have been devastated. I kept all of that in, and that was hard too, because I
Yeah.
wanted, there were times where I really wanted to, like, do I have, who do I look like? What is this? And it, I'm sure many, you've gone through this when you sit in a doctor's office and you're filling out these forms and medical history, and you're
Oh,
putting
yeah.
down NA or unknown or something like that. And then, the doctor looks at you and goes, how do you not know all of this information? Well, I'm adopted. Well, why do you not know? I don't know. So
Right.
it's, we all go through that, and I call it humiliation. It really is tough. And I've told people this too, is that I remember I can't remember what grade, it was grade school, I know, but we had a project to do on our family tree.
Mhm.
And all I could do was fill in my adopted mother, my adopted father, and I think maybe one or two relatives on my adopted father's side of the family. And I turned it in, and the teacher was like, "This is incomplete." And I said, "No, it's complete, because this is, And so I had to go through that whole thing, and it's like, you go through that, no better word to use, that shame or that feeling of
Mhm.
embarrassment, that
And
why do I not know this information? So yeah, I would say it was probably during my teenage years I started wondering, but then, holding off. Yeah,
okay.
for just like I said, she never would have understood, and it would have devastated her for sure.
You're bringing up such a good point, many good points about just how this plays out in regular life. There's just no escaping it, going to the doctor, going to school. And it just
Mhm.
feels isolating and shaming, like you said, just to not
Yeah.
have that basic information or to not be able to complete a family tree. It's really
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, for sure. It is.
So let's get to the good stuff for a while, Kathy, because there's so much joy in your story as well. As
Yeah.
most of us know, we approach reunion probably, I would say the vast majority of us ill prepared for
Yeah,
what it entails. I don't know
for
if you can
sure.
adequately prepare, but some of us, me, were not prepared. And so, can you tell us about your journey to find your biological family? It's just so compelling. And also, one
Mm.
of the things that stood out, and I'm just going to give you a hint so you'll talk about it. I'm just going to say happy birthday, and I think you're going to know what to say about that. Right? Okay. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, wow, you're gonna get me emotional already. Holy smoke.
I'm ready.
So,
I've got
um,
Kleenex to share with you, but it will help.
so, Amy kind of touched on it a little bit. Like, what was the catalyst? The first real catalyst was 2008. So my wife and I had been trying for quite a few years to have a child, and she finally got pregnant. We were, older, I'll just put it that way. But by God's grace, we got, she got pregnant. And I remember the day my son was born, and he actually just a few days ago turned 15, uh, which is really hard to believe. But I remember sitting in the hospital after he was born, and I looked at him, and I looked at my wife, and I said, do you realize that this is the first time in my life, at 30, almost 38 years old at the time, this is the first time in my life that I'm staring someone in the face, that I'm looking at someone that I share blood with. And it just hit me just like a, it just like a punch in the gut that I'm 38 years old. This is the first time I'm looking at someone that I share blood with. And at that moment, that was like the first seed to say, I've got to find my birth family. I've got to, I joined I was in the Navy. So I was in the Navy for 26 years. I joined the Navy at 23. It was the best decision I ever made because I cleaned up my life. I got going in the right direction. And I actually made, I have friends now that are like family. Through that 26 years, I made friends that are now like family to me. It's like a second family. But anyway, with moving and you're moving every 3 years and you're in a new place and sometimes you're overseas, it's hard to really get serious about searching. And so you fast forward to 2015 and I was stationed in Virginia, and, I'm almost 45 at that time. And I'm like, I have to do this. I've got to get serious about this. And it just so happened that I was reading these articles about people that were adoptees that were finding their birth families through Facebook. I'm like, I wonder. So I went on Facebook and I found a adoptee group for adoptees from North Carolina. And I put in my, birth date. I put in the county that I was born in, just some basic stuff. I think it was probably 30 minutes. And 30 minutes later, I got an instant message on Facebook. Here's your birth mom's name. Boom.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was, and what I found out later on was that it was pretty much process of elimination. That I was as Asheville at that time. I don't know, you guys probably know now, Asheville's a huge tourist town. It's a beautiful part of the country. People go there all the time. It's known for like craft beer and all this kind of, all this great stuff. But in 1970, it was a small country town between Charlotte and Nashville. That's really what it was. So I was the only baby boy born on August 10th that did not get a name. So that's how they were able to, process of elimination. That's how they figured out who my birth mom was and how, so just kind of putting, doing a little, investigative work or whatever. So, I had my birth mom's name. And then like maybe 45 minutes later, I get another instant message with a picture of my birth mom from a wedding announcement in 1972, I want to say. So it was the first time I'm like, well, I'm definitely seeing some resemblances, between me and my mom. This looks like this could be could be her. Well, then fast forward like another half hour, I get another Facebook message, and it's a link to my maternal aunt's Facebook page. And so I went to her Facebook page, and it was pretty open, and there happened to be an email address on there. So I clicked, I got the email address. I composed I wouldn't even say it was paragraphs. It was probably like 3 to 4 little short blurbs, starting off with, I'm not a stalker. I'm not a scam artist, all these things, because this is like, you're coming in totally, they don't know you. So I put this letter together or this email together. And that night I read it to my wife probably 4, 5, 6 times. And then I was like, okay, I said, you do understand, once I press send on this, we're on this ride and we have no idea where it's going, how many curves, how many ups and downs. I mean, this is it. We're on our way. And she's like, I'm supporting, I'm right behind you, and, go for it, do it. She was incredibly supportive. And so I sent the email off, and it was probably about 30 minutes later, I get an email back from my maternal aunt. And she's like, yeah, it's possible. I was, her younger sister, but I do remember her going away. I remember her going away for a while. Okay. And then, she kind of told me some news that was a little bit, not it was a little sad, but she told me that my birth mom had a massive stroke a few years prior to this, and that she was in a nursing home. and that, it was, so that was kind of like, oh, okay, but at least she's there. At least she's alive, and there's still a possibility. But then my maternal aunt said, I checked out your Facebook page, and she said, you bear a very striking resemblance to her daughter, which would be my sister. And she's like, you guys look like twins. You guys look, you look like you could be twins. And I actually have the picture with me. I have it on my computer. So maybe before we leave, I can show it to you.
I would love to see it. We would love to see.
Because when my wife saw the picture, when my sister and I first met, she looked at that picture. She said, yeah, you guys don't need a DNA test. That's for sure. So anyway, so my maternal aunt said, look, I'm going to get some information. I'll get back to you. And it was probably about a week. And she called me and she's like, well, here's what I know. And so she went through this whole thing. She said, my sister, my birth mom's name is Judy. She said, Judy was very young when she had you. My parents were not very supportive of, obviously they were very upset. And the birth father was not in the picture. And so this was North Carolina, 1970. You can understand the climate, the cultural climate at that time. So they sent my mom to a home for unwed mothers in Asheville. And that's where she had me. She was there until she had me. And then she never talked about it. Her parents came and picked her up at the home for unwed mothers, drove her back to her hometown, which was like 4 or 5 hours away. And they never spoke about it again. Like my birth mom, my mom never told anybody about this until, I began searching for her. And so I met my maternal aunt first. That was 2000 Father's Day weekend, 2015 is when I met my maternal aunt. And she was so nice and just really opened up her arms to me. And she's like, we're so glad that you didn't give up. We're so happy that you did not quit. You didn't give up. And her and her husband, they invited me over for like a Father's Day brunch. Because this is, and I'm sorry to like keep going like back and putting pieces together because I keep forgetting things. So I was a musician in the Navy band. That was my job. So, grew up as a musician. And so I joined the Navy to be a musician, and that's what I did for 26 years. And so it just so happened, this is how I believe God had his hand in all of this, is that weekend, Father's Day weekend, 2015, I had a work trip to Spartanburg, South Carolina, which was where my maternal aunt lives, in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Wow.
I mean, you can't make it's like, that was how, this was like, there's no other way to explain this. Anyway, so yeah, she had me over for Father's Day brunch. There's all this family around and and everybody's like so nice and they're welcoming, this and that. And so the one part that I didn't expect, was totally unexpected, was, my growing up with a Japanese mom, my adopted mom being Japanese, she was Buddhist. So I was raised as a Buddhist for 40 years, Well, then, I never was like, we get to this Father's Day lunch and they're going to pray over the meal. And I didn't think it was no big deal. Okay, yeah, that's great. So I'm quiet and everything. And just as he's talking about, thank you, thank you, Lord, for bringing Patrick into our lives. We're so grateful that you brought him into our lives. Watch him, guide him, protect him, all these things. And as that's happening, I can't put into words what I was feeling at that moment, but it was just this closeness. I felt like God was just wrapping his arms around me at that time and saying, it's going to be okay. I've got you through this. And I didn't understand it at that time, but I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to keep going on this. But so then after I met my maternal aunt and her family, the next day I went and met my sister. And it was, she and I connected. We had talked on the phone. The first time we talked on the phone, we talked on the phone for like 3.5 hours, just talking about our lives and everything. And so when we first met, it was like we had been like, 45 years was, or 40 years, or because I was born August 1970. Her birthday is January 1972. So we're a little less than 2 years apart in age. And so we're pretty close. And I just know, like, when we first started talking and when we first met, we're extremely close. Like, that's the main, my maternal aunt, I'm close to her. And then my sister, I'm really close to her. And it's just that was great. But then there was this little piece missing, and that was, I still got to finish this. I haven't met my birth mom yet. And my sister and I had talked a lot about, okay, when do you want to meet? When can we meet? The one thing my sister was worried about was how my mom would take it, with her condition, being in a nursing home. How would she take it? Would it be tough on her and everything else? So we just waited. And I remember was right after Mother's Day of 2016. So I had been on this ride, had been on this journey for about a year together, meeting, getting back to, this reunion. And so right after Mother's Day weekend, 2016, my sister, she texted me and she's like, okay, I think we need to get a weekend let's plan a weekend to where you can come down and meet mom. Okay. So I was like, okay. And then my wife and I, my wife, myself, and my son, we traveled down to North Carolina. We actually were in South Carolina, but right over the border from North Carolina. And so we went down there, and the next day we were going to go to my mom's nursing home to meet her. But my wife and son didn't come because I didn't know how this would go. You're unsure how this is all going to go, right? So I just said, okay, well, you guys, go ahead and do whatever you want to do, go shopping, go do whatever. And so my sister and I and her husband, we went to the nursing home, and I waited out in the waiting room or in the lobby. And my sister went in with her husband, and my mom's husband is with her. And I just got to say this really quick about him. He is the salt of the earth, because he is there with her every day. And when I say every day, I mean every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, from the time the nursing home opens at around 8 until the time that they give my mom medication to help her go to sleep, which is usually around 6:30 or 7. He's there, and he sits by her bedside the entire time and talks to her. It's like, that's the picture of, to me, that's like a picture of love, that the love that they have with each other. He's amazing. But he was there, of course. And so my sister goes in and she starts talking to my mom about, hey, mom, do you remember, giving up a child, in Asheville, North Carolina, it's 1970. And initially my mom was like, no, I don't. And then, my sister told my mom, she's like, Mama, it's okay. I know, and then she said, he's looking for you. His name is Patrick, and he's been looking for you. He's been searching for you for the last, several years, and he wants to meet you, and he's here out in the lobby. And so my sister said she just took this deep breath and went, yes, I did. And then so my sister comes out, and I'm like nervous, and I'm like, my heart's just going boom, 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 boom. And so I go in, and I'm like, I saw my mom for the first time. And yeah, it was just a moment that I'll never forget. And so she looks at me, And she starts telling me, she goes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't have a choice. And I looked at her and I said, it's okay. You don't need to apologize for anything. I said, God had his plan and this was his plan. And I'm here now. And we know, we're here together. It's okay. And she told me later on, because I was there for about 2.5 hours. I was there and we visited and we had a wonderful visit. And she told me during that time, she said, she said, I didn't know whether I had a boy or a girl. They didn't tell me. She said, I had you and they did what they did to me and they took you away and they never told me whether I had a boy or a girl. And I just thought when I heard that, I'm like, how cruel, how cruel that we were as a society at that time to treat women that way. It's just, and I'm sure you guys have read the book, The Girls Who Went Away. I read that book and I just couldn't believe it. It was just it's just like, how could we treat people that way? How did we, as a society, how did we do that? But so, my mom is an incredibly strong woman. She's a fighter. And I think that's where I get a little bit of my fighting spirit sometimes about not giving up, is from her. But, so after, we were getting ready to leave and, my mom stops me or, she's like, she says, Patrick. And, I said, yeah. And she goes, grandson. Cause she knew I told her I had a son. She says, I want to see my grandson. I said, oh, you want to see your grandson, huh? She said, yes. I said, okay, well, we'll plan another trip and we'll make a trip so you can meet your grandson. And so we did that about maybe a month and a half later. We did another trip down there and she got to meet my wife and she got to meet my son. And she keeps my son's picture in her room, like his school picture. It's up in her room on one of her cardboard, like a billboard. So again, then, my birthday was in August. So this was June of 2016. So then, it's kind of crazy, I guess, but like the one thing that I had wanted, like for growing up was, I'd really want my birth mom to call me on my birthday. And so I didn't expect anything, here's August 10th, 2016. I am not expecting, she has my number because we talked every day. We still talk every day. I call her every day talk for about 5-10 minutes on the phone. And, she tells me she loves me. I tell her I love her. But that day, August 10th, 2016, I had just met her 2 months ago. I didn't expect anything. So about 2:30 in the afternoon, my phone rings and I see it's her. And I pick up the phone, I say hello. And the first words out of her mouth, happy birthday, Patrick. And I just started crying because I'm like, I said, Mom, I've been waiting 46 years to hear you say that. And so she just started laughing. She starts laughing, but yeah, it was such a beautiful time and that reunion. And her husband had told me, like a couple of times, he's told me in conversations that he and I have had, he said, there would have been times before she found you, before you found her. He said, there were times where she would just be staring off. She'd be in bed, she'd be watching television or something, and she just had this far off look in her eyes, just looking off into space. And she said, oftentimes I look at her and go, Judy, what you thinking about? Nothing. And he said, I am convinced that she was thinking about you. She was thinking about that child that she had to give up for adoption. And, my sister says the same thing. She's like, I think that she has always been wanting to have you or to find you, but she just didn't know how to go about doing it. And there was a picture that my sister and I and her, we took together, so the three of us, and you can just see, it's hard for my mom to smile, and everything, but you can see the joy in her eyes that her kids are there. She's got her family back. And you can just see that piece of her heart that was missing, there's that little piece, it's now complete. And my sister and her, her dad has said the same thing, that it's now complete. So yeah, it was just an amazing journey. And I know, it's been ups and downs. There were times it was frustrating, especially at the beginning, trying to get information and things like that. But so yeah, that's how everything came together. It's, totally, I firmly believe, as a Christ follower, I firmly believe that God had his hand in every piece of this and was putting it all together the way that he wanted it to come together.
Oh gosh, Patrick, my heart was like smiling and aching. I'm sure you're feeling the same way, Amy. It was just like thinking about her having to hold that secret, and how many first moms, especially of that era, that's the shame and not even knowing what sex your baby is, and all of those so cruel. And then at that point in her life and in your life, for all of you to find each other, it's just like, for me, that's what it's all about. That's what all the sacrifice.
Yeah, no, amazing. And, I thought what you said too, and I think my birth mom said the same thing, is she was so worried I would be angry and upset with her and mad at her. And I think we all are compassionate, and we realize what they went through at that time. There was not another choice. They were not given a choice, being so young, and society. So, I think they all want to search. A lot of them do, right? But they don't know how to go about it, and they don't want to interfere in our lives. And I know my birth mom was just so thrilled that I came knocking at the door, which I'm sure your family as well. And I know you said in your submission that meeting your sister and your mom had changed your life in ways you never imagined. So what are you feeling now that they've been in your life for so long?
Yeah, they are. It's like, I guess the best way to put it is now, like, it's like we've always been a family. It's like we've always been together. Like those 45 years, 40 some odd years, just, they're all washed away. For me, it was just a healing and realizing that, it was, not only just finding my birth family, but finding God, finding the Lord. That was an unexpected part of all of this. I never thought that would happen. But I have to just say, and I know that it's not this case for everybody, but I can't say enough how much my wife played a role in this. Like, my wife prayed about it. My wife was so supportive of everything that I was doing, like even through the rough times and the struggle and this and that. And, my adopted mom, and I said this, I think maybe part of it was alluded to in the letter, or in the submission, my adopted mom was very protective of me. So much so that any other woman that came into my life, she was, let's just say, she wasn't very nice to them. She made it difficult for them, and she made it difficult for my wife. And, now after she passed away, and I went through all the things I did, and then to find out different things that my adopted mom kept from me, little details that she kept from me about, certain things about my birth family or my birth mom. And then, different documents that I would find that, like, wait a minute, she didn't tell me this. How do I not know? How did I not know this? And, my stepdad, and I call him my stepdad, but he's, now he's really my dad. I mean, I consider him my dad. He had a challenging relationship with my adopted mom as well, and they split up, and I went through, so it was that pain of people walking out of my life. And the one person, well, outside of God, the one person that has never walked out of my life is my wife. My wife has been there for me, and I can't stress that enough, just how supportive she has been, from finding and encouraging me. And like I said, I know not everybody has that or finds that, but I was just very blessed to have that. But yeah, I went through I had, it's just one more thing about with my adopted mom. As I said earlier, I view her differently now. I view her in a different light. And like, I look at pictures of her and I from back when I was, young, 8, 9, 10. And I often look at those pictures and I just like, I don't know this person. I feel differently. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's a very complex, mixed emotion. Like, she was there for me, she protected me, she took care of me, but at the same time, she was a hard person to get to know, and she put up a lot of walls around people. And I had to go through a process of forgiving her. I really did. I went through like a year to 2 years of forgiving her, because after I found all this stuff out, I got very angry at her. But it's hard to get angry at someone that's already passed away. What do you do? So, I had to go through that process, that healing of forgiving her. And, at that point now. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all that, Patrick, because I think that's one thing as we're starting to get down to the last part of the interview is about the messaging we want to get out to our audience. And you said that there were things you'd like to say to encourage our audience. But before we do that, I'm really curious about the healing part, because I think I think it's a lifetime journey.
Yep.
And it ebbs and flows. Sometimes I think, oh, I've got this all figured out and I'm feeling good. And then I'll be darned if something just doesn't trigger me. And it's usually like a TV show with a family for some reason.
Yeah.
And then I'm back to square one again. And it's like, oh boy, here we go. I just think it's helpful for adopted people to share the commonalities in their journey, and also some of the things that are working, so that we can, hey, maybe that's another tool that I can use that adopted person is using. So maybe just tell us a little bit more about, I know you said therapy, but, and obviously your faith is very important to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said it's funny that you mentioned the triggers. You'll see a TV show or something. I don't know about you. I don't know about you two, but This Is Us was I don't know. I love that show. It was especially the moment, I know I'm not trying to take the show off track. I'm really not. But the episode where Randall found out the secrets that his adopted mom was keeping from him. Oh my word. After that episode, I was done for like 3 days. I just like, so, but what I have told, and I've, questions from other adoptees, and, how did you start? What did you do? And I always say, everybody's journey is different. First of all, what I went through is, I was blessed to have positive interactions with everybody along the way. I know that that's not the case for everybody. I know that. I've talked with a few adoptees here recently where they've had struggles with their finding their birth mom, and then their adopted mom is still alive, and their adopted mother is creating issues, creating problems and things like that. And like, I don't really have an answer for that. Just, I know that it's you were the one that was adopted. This is your journey. Figure out how you want to do this and how you want to make this go the best that it can. It's hard. It is like I said, you're on this ride and you don't know where it's going to turn, where it's going to go up, where it's going to go down, but don't give up. I just say that to people, don't give up. I ran into roadblocks. I mean, my goodness, I was adopted in North Carolina, born in North Carolina. That's one of the most archaic states for adoptees to try to do anything. I couldn't get any answers from the state of North Carolina, and don't have access to my original birth certificate and this and that and whatever. But I wouldn't give up. It was that deep burning desire to want to find answers. And I think we're all, as adoptees, I feel we're entitled to those answers. We deserve answers. And we have all these questions of, where did I come from? Like I said earlier in the letter, why was I adopted? Why didn't, and it wasn't that my birth mom didn't want me. It's that she didn't, in her case, it was not something that it wasn't her choice. It wasn't up to her. Decisions were made for her by other people. So I would just encourage the other adoptees out there to just, keep going on the journey. Don't give up. Even if you don't find the answers that you want, or you're getting no, or, whatever, just keep going. Don't give up, keep going. Cause for me, it was my faith. It was, prayers and, faith in God, and knowing that his plan was there. He's got his plan for me, and I'm going to trust in that. And even if I don't understand it, I'm still going to keep trusting in it and keep going. So that would be my message. Just don't give up.
I think that's a great message. Amy, are there any other questions that you had that we didn't cover for Patrick?
No, I just appreciate what you just said, Patrick, because, it is about us. It is our journey, and you have to do what's important to you and continue to, move forward. And not that we're intentionally trying to hurt anybody, but those are answers that as adoptees, we should have. And
Absolutely.
so, I appreciate you saying that, because some people will just give up because they don't want to hurt someone or how someone will react. So it's important to, look within and do what you need to do.
Well, and it's so soul crushing too, Patrick. I don't know how you feel about this, but I just got a letter from or an email from a friend of my mom's who had said, basically, why did you do what you did to her by finding, and it hurts so badly. And I felt so guilty. And it's trying to remind ourselves that we matter too in this. And that sometimes the judgment comes as you're being selfish and ungrateful. And boy, did that come raging back in my heart. And I knew that she was coming from a place of love and protection of my mother, because she was there for my mother during her suffering. But I just felt like about this big, because I did this horrible thing. And then it was just really painful. So we are put in a very difficult position. And quite honestly, I don't think we're really used to considering our feelings as valuable and important.
I
don't know what 1,000% about that, Patrick.
No, I agree 1,000%. And I will also add that one thing that has also helped me really feel like I'm making a difference for other adoptees is getting involved in, a lot of these states now are trying to change the original birth certificate laws or something like that. I've tried in North Carolina. I've run into brick wall after brick wall after brick wall, but I've been involved in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and a couple other states where I've joined like their petition or whatever you want to call it to speak to their state legislatures. I've submitted my story, submitted the impact that all of this has had on me. And I know in Massachusetts, they now have full access to their original birth certificates. And I think the same thing in Connecticut.
It's
so
really
that,
exciting.
Yeah. And that has made me feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. Like, yes, I have my journey, I have my story, but I feel like in some small way, I'm helping other adoptees get to their story, for their journey. And so I would also encourage other adult adoptees that, if you've found yours, or even if you haven't, or you're running into challenges, try to find other states or your state or whatever, and really try and find a way that you can get involved in that, because there's so many of them, and you run into these, like I said, these old archaic ways of thinking that, well, you're not entitled to that. Well, says who?
Right.
That was, and what I've also told some of these legislators is that you do understand that this is, like 2022, 2023, you have so many areas where these adoptees can find this stuff out, DNA, ancestry DNA, 123, all these places. Would you rather, because these secrets, what you thought was a secret 50 years ago, it's not really going to be a secret if you can't change. And so, I'm hoping and I pray that more states jump on board that. But I would just add that too. That's like you saying, it's like we're, we're made to feel like, well, you're not entitled to this, or you're, how dare you go and, don't you realize what this is doing to your, adopted mom, and they loved you and this and that. And it's like, I understand that, but this is about me. This is about my healing, about my journey. And like, you said, Amy, it's like, we all have our story, and, we have a right to tell that story. So
Patrick, it's so powerful, and it's really all hands on deck. And I'm so sorry, my two horrible huskies have found their way in the house, and they're making all sorts of in the background. Patrick, before we end, I didn't realize that you were a musician. Hey, do you mind back there? So can you just tell us what you play? And like, I'm just curious
my goodness.
about that.
Yeah. So I play saxophone and clarinet.
Oh my gosh.
So I didn't even realize. I started out in, like most people, I started out in grade school, elementary school, and I went through high school, went through college, and then found this Navy thing that I could make money playing music and going around the world. And that was like, I'm like, here's this, here's, I'm like this country boy from North Carolina, and I'm standing at the foothills of the Himalayan mountains, getting ready to play for, because music is a universal language, and it's like, travel around the world, and it's like the Temptations is, the same reaction in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, as it is in New York City. They just go crazy. They love it. So yeah, I still play. Matter of fact, my son's following my footsteps. He plays clarinet as well. So he's in the high school marching band. And I got a little emotional when I saw him in his high school marching band uniform. Because he's a freshman this year. When they started doing marching band this year, I was looking at that picture, and it was like I went back in time, to me as a freshman in high school with a marching band uniform. And I just, man, how this history repeats itself. Here we go, but and now he's learning how to play saxophone. So it's like, now it's really like his father. So
that's so great.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm carrying on he's carrying on the tradition. So
I love that, Patrick. And I probably, I'm sure Amy feels the same way when you find something where you can just completely be immersed in it, and that's all you're thinking about. And I think when you're doing something creative like music, I can't even imagine how much that's healed you and helped you, just to have that as you express and to provide for your family with it.
Yeah. Oh, you're 1,000% right. There's been moments where I've, even on this adoption journey, where I've been like really down and really upset, and I play, or I pick up my instrument and I'll play, and it'll be like, this is therapy. This is what I need. This is my therapy. And so for sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's so great, Patrick. Well, is there anything we didn't cover? Anything that you wanted to say, or any other last thoughts before we sign off?
No, I think we got everything. I know I probably talked way too much, but I
No.
really appreciate this. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I thank you both so much for doing this podcast and really, giving this space for for adoptees to come in and talk and share their stories and things like that. And yeah, it's helpful. It means a lot.
Well, it's been absolutely my honor and my happiness to be able to be in this sacred space with other people who are willing to share their stories. And I think the heart behind everybody that comes on the show is not only to express their own experience, but the desire to help each other. It feels so connecting. And I think we need that connection so much. And we're able
For
to
sure.
provide for each other and just to
Yep.
feel supported. And Amy, thank you so much for volunteering your time and here today. I know this meant a lot to you too, to be here with Patrick. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you both so much.
okay, keep playing those instruments.
We'll do for sure. We'll do.